Ano nga ba ang kasaysayan? Mahalaga bang pag-aralan natin ang kasaysayan? What will we get if we study and master history? This is Sir John Michael Antone, and for today's video, we are going to discuss about history and the importance of studying history. If you are still new to my vlog, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and ring the bell down there para ma-updated ka sa mga bagong videos na aking i-upload. So, wala nang patumpik-tumpik pa, simulan na natin ang ating diskusyon tungkol sa history at ang kahalagahan ng pag-aaral ng kasaysayan. In 3, 2, 1. History is defined as a systematic account of a set of phenomena, whether or not chronological. It has been said that all history teaches, and everyone says the lessons of history. Pag sinasabi nating systematic account of the past, ang ibig sabihin nito ay ang pag-aaral ng kasaysayan ay may prosesong sinusunod, may sistemang sinusunod. That is why, as a discipline, it follows scientific inquiries to arrive towards a particular truth. Kaya, ang pag-aaral ng kasaysayan ay hindi lang basta-basta yan, na makinig lang tayo sa mga haka-haka. No, we have to verify these particular claims, if ever these claims are true or not, based on the availability of the evidences. Kaya nga dito papasok yung sistema ng empiricism, no? Dapat merong empirical evidences, no? Dito papasok yung philosophical study of positivism, no? So, in other words, history always follow certain processes in order to arrive into a particular truth. And later on, we will be talking about historiography as one of the methodologies of studying history. And these are scientific processes doing internal and external criticisms. So these are scientific processes of the studies of history. Ngunit, saan nga ba nanggaling ang salitang history? Okay? So, etymologically speaking, the word history comes from the Greek word historia, na ang ibig sabihin, knowledge acquired through inquiry and investigation. So, as a discipline, it is very old. It existed at around 2,400 years ago. It existed with as old as mathematics and philosophy. Now, in fact, Herodotus was the father of history, and we will talk about more of this history, sino yung nagsimula ng pag-aaral ng kasaysayan. As time progresses, the study of history became relevant to people's lives. That is why, with the coming of positivism in modernity, with the coming of the empirical sciences in the 21st century, the study of history becomes very relevant to people's lives. After all, it becomes the systematic account of the pasts of people or group of people, maybe society, things, culture, places, events, through written documents and evidences. As an academic discipline, history studies people in the past, great people in the past, society, civilization. History studies wars, revolutions, and scientific breakthroughs and major events that transpired in the life of people with the society. Pero ang tanong, what counts as history? Is it true that if there is no document, then there is no history? Para bang yung document lang ba as valid evidence, would actually prove that history exists or such particular event really happened in the past? So, no document, no history? Our answer here is that history does not limit to document. So it doesn't mean na walang dokumento walang magpapatunay na totoo yung kasaysayan na nangyayari. So, oral traditions also count as history. For instance, memoirs, testimonies of people who were primary, we call them primary sources, or who have direct experiences during the time that the event transpired. So, however, there are actually two terms that we have to clarify. The first one is history, and the second one is historiography. So what's the difference between history and historiography? The objectives of history is to study the past itself. So past events, people, and any other transpired events in the past, and most importantly, the causes and effects of these particular events that happened in the past. That's the object of history. On the other hand, historiography is the history of history. So its object of the study is history itself. That is why sa historiography, yung main concern was not all about the past itself. The main concern also of historiography is to study the historical text. Paano ba ito isinulat? The context of the text itself, para kanino ba yung text, and the author, criticizing, analyzing the credibility of the author. Was he or she credible enough in writing this particular document? So that's in historiography. And the historical method also employed. Yung historical method, paano ba na-produce yung document na ito? And most importantly, historiography deals with sources as valid evidences that indeed such particular event is not hearsay or opinion coming from people, but it is a history that really happened in the past. That is why ito yung maganda sa new curriculum ngayon, yung tinatawag nating GEPH or General Education Readings in the Philippine History. Kasi this is a new approach of studying Philippine history. Kasi long time ago or before, even in my previous studies, we study history through memorization, memorizing significant people, events, and whatever things that are included in the past. Yun yung atin. Minsan nakakaboring yung pag-aaral, yung sa experience ko noon. But our concern right now is the using of historiography in the study of the Philippine history. This is a new approach. This is why. Now, historiography lets you, especially as students, to have better understanding of history. Hindi lang you will just immediately accept what is told. Minsan, yan kasi yung natin yung perception natin na ano yung sinabi ni ma'am, ano yung sinabi sa aklat, ay yun na yun. We just accept what is told to us, what is taught to us. But here, it's different. You will learn to ask questions. Bakit ba ito nasabi ni ano? Totoo ba ito? Hindi. Diba? So, you learn also facts and the historian's context. The context of historians. For instance, examination of Antonio Pigafetta's account of Magellan's voyage around the world. So, you will learn to analyze the context. Bakit ba ito ay sinulat ni Pigafetta? For whom? Was it written for the Filipinos? Or it was written for the Spaniards? Rather for the Europeans. So, yan. Maganda yan. And the students would also become critical in the lessons of history presented to them. So, gaya ng sinabi ko kanina, you will learn to be critical to the truths or claims that are presented to you. You will not just simply accept immediately, but you will learn to think critically. You will expound your imagination. You will learn to expound your horizon, your historical understanding as to why this particular historical facts, events, or any people are included in our study. However, there's one common question that we all have as students of history. Now, can history be absolutely objective? Ibig sabihin, can it be 100% accurate? Dahil sinabi ito ng isang historian, then it's 100% accurate? Now, our answer to that question is a big no. Because, let me present to you one reality. Number one is that facts cannot speak for themselves. For instance, an artifact. Now, there's an artifact found by paleontologists, for instance, found by archaeologists. So, can the artifacts speak for themselves? Can it explain for itself? No. That is why historians interpret the facts being discovered. And we should know as history students that historians' interpretation of facts could be influenced by his or her educational background, culture, environment, and even prior knowledge about the particular topic. Thus, there will always be a room for subjectivity in studying history. However, if this is the case, that there will always be room for subjectivity in the studying of history, then can history will not be considered as an academic discipline and scientific? So, that is why dito papasok guys yung pag-aaral or rigorous research to make it as scientific. That is why historians should employ scientific processes such as, gaya ng sinabi ko kanina, the use of empirical evidences, the employment of the internal and external criticism, the use of historiography itself. Thus, history would remain as scientific because of the rigorous research that historians employ, and of course the methodology that they have used or utilized in the arrival or the inquiry or in the process of arriving towards the particular truth. Now, the historians need also historical sources in their studies. Siyempre, pag walang historical sources, they cannot also write something about that particular event that happened in the past. So there must be sources, because the historical sources would serve as the bridge towards our historical understanding about the past or the object of the study of the past. So, historical sources are classified as two, and both of these two classified sources are important in the study of history. So, number one is the primary sources, and the second one is the secondary sources. Now, what's the difference between these two types of sources? So, basically, marami yung differences ng dalawa, but I would just simply summarize it into this idea that the primary source are sources that are directly, I would say directly connected to that particular historical object of study, while the secondary source is not directly connected towards the object of study of the past. Now, example of primary source, when you study about the voyage of Magellan in the Philippines, or the experience of the Europeans, or the first experience of the European exploration in the Philippine Islands, well, one of the primary sources that we can actually have was the writings of Antonio Pigapita, and that was written by Pigapita himself. And we know why it was considered as a primary source. Definitely because Antonio Pigapetta was present. He was with Magellan during the voyage, from Spain towards the Philippine Islands, and he was there present. So he was directly connected to that particular event that happened. So that is why primary source yun. Kasi yung isinulat niya, it could be a memoir, or yung witness niya, yung mga nakita niya, na-observe niya personally, yan yung tawag doon ay primary source. Okay? Now, on the other hand, when we study secondary source, these are usually produced by an author who used primary source to produce material or historical material. So, for example, when you want to study about the Philippine Revolution, so you might read the book of Teodoro Agoncillo on the Revolt of the Masses. So basically, Teodoro Agoncillo's book is considered as a secondary source. So definitely, Teodoro Agoncillo's book on the Revolt of the Masses is considered as a secondary source. Basically because it was published in 1956 while the revolution happened in the late 19th century. In the last years of 19th century, somewhere in 1800s, 1890s, something like that. So, medyo, he was not really directly connected rather to that particular event that he studied. So, secondary ang tawag doon. However, how are we going to verify the authenticity, the credibility, and the provenance of a particular historical source? So, we have actually two things to do to verify these historical sources. So number one is external criticism. So when we say external criticism, it is the practice of verifying the authenticity of the evidence by examining its physical characteristics. So consistency with time, kailan na-publish yung material at saka kailan nangyari yung object of study, when it was produced, and the materials also, even the materials used, anong ginamit sa pagsulat, anong sinulatan. Ayun, these are part of the external criticisms to verify the authenticity of the historical material. Second is the internal criticism. So when we say internal criticism, it is the examination of the truthfulness of the evidence. So this is on the author's context, the context of the author, the background of the author, para kanino ba ang context, yung perspective, ayan, the content itself, para kanino ba. So this is what we call internal criticism, and both of these are important methodology to verify the veracity of truth, the authenticity of such particular historical sources. Ngayon, punta naman tayo sa tanong that why do we need to study history? Sabi nila, past is past, no need to discuss. Do you agree with that? So, why there is a need to study history? Eh, nangyari na yun? Tapos na yun? So, bakit ba natin pag-aralan? Di ba? Now, I have 5, although there are many reasons or importance why we need to study history. But so far in this discussion, I have 5 to give you. Number 1 is that history is used to unite a nation. So states and societies actually uses historical studies to unite a particular nation. That is why some societies made use of history to unite their nation, to unite their people, especially nung time na there were strong sense of regionalism. Sa atin bilang mga Pilipino, ginagamit natin ang kasaysayan upang pag-isahin ang bawat Pilipino. Pangalawa, history gives us answers of who we really are. In other words, it provides us with our collective identity. For instance, as Filipino people, paano natin malalaman yung ating totoong identity bilang Pilipino? So, here comes historical studies giving us a short glimpse of the past, of what really happened before. At dahil doon, ang pag-aaral ng kasaysayan ay makatutulong sa atin upang malaman natin yung identity natin bilang mga Pilipino. Kasi our present identity of who and what we are right now in the present is historically rooted. That is why we need history to really know, to deeply know who we really are as persons. Number 3 reason is that lessons from the past can be used to make sense of the present. That is why yung mga lessons that happened in the past can be very useful in our life right now in the present. We can make use of what happened in the past, of the previous discoveries, of the previous events that happened in the past, of the patriotism of people. We can make use of those lessons for our life right now in the present. That is why we need to study history for us to learn also the lessons, the significant lessons that were happened or taught to us by our past. Kaya nga, sabi pa nga nila, we cannot change the past. Yes, that's true. We can no longer undo what happened in the past. But mind you, we can always learn lessons of what happened in the past so that we can make use of these lessons in living our life right now in the present. Ang pang-apat na dahilan is that learning from the past mistakes can help people to not repeat them. Diba? So ano yun? Learning from past mistakes would help us to not repeat them. Otherwise, if we would not be able to correct those mistakes in the past, then baka totoo yung sinasabi nila that history will repeat in itself. So that is why, to avoid that the same mistake would be repeated again in history, then there is a need for us to go back to study the past mistakes so that we can learn lessons from those mistakes in living and making important decisions of our life right now in the present. So that kung ano yung gagawin natin sa kasalukuyan ay hindi na pareho sa nangyari sa nakaraan. At eto ang pinakahuling dahilan kung bakit kailangan nating pag-aralan ang kasaysayan. Being reminded of the great past can inspire people to keep the good practices and in making those good practices as a new practice or preserving or continuing those practices in living right now in the present and in moving our life forward. So, in history, dito natin malalaman yung kabayanihan na ipinakita ng ating mga bayani noon. Dito natin makikita yung patriotism, yung pagkakaisa ng mga Pilipino during the Revolution, yung pagkakaisa ng mga Pilipino in achieving nationalism, in gaining freedom. Ayun, these are good practices that we can learn from history. And also, in history also, we can learn the good deeds of our heroes like Jose Rizal, Andres Bonifacio, and other heroes who were doing extraordinary deeds that are worth to remember in history. Kaya nga, bakit natin yun pag-aralan? Siyempre, because we can make use of those good practices in living our life right now in the present. So, this is Sir Jun Michael Antone, and I am telling you, ang pag-aaral ng kasaysayan ay magandang basehan sa ating mga desisyon sa kasalukuyan tungo sa magandang kinabukasan.